Attention political junkies, I've got some big news and an update on both the RNC debates and the nominating calendar. So get your pens out because you're going to want to write a lot of this down. Let me start with the big update to the calendar, and then I'm going to get to the debates. The first votes for the 2024 cycle for the Republican nomination for president are now set. The Iowa caucuses will be held on January 15th, 2024. Which means that New Hampshire will follow them, and their primary is likely to be on January 23rd, the following Tuesday. Keep in mind, though, that these are just dates for Republicans. The Democrats' calendar is separate, and as we've discussed, it's a bit of a mess. So this is just with respect to the Republican candidates. The state to vote after New Hampshire, Nevada, although the timing remains under some litigation, but tentatively right now, the primary is set for Tuesday, February 6th. This, of course, is going to be followed by South Carolina, which is holding its primary on Saturday. That's an interesting, right? It's a Saturday, not a Tuesday, which is when elections normally happen, on February 24th. And then Super Tuesday will follow that 10 days later on March 15th. So why does all this matter? Well, the first voting will start way earlier than it did in 2016. As I said, Iowa set its date for January 15th. But in 2016, it was February 1st, 15 days later. Second, in 2016, the time between Iowa and Super Tuesday was much more compressed. It started February 1st and it ended on March 1st, 29 days. Now, there's going to be 50 days between Iowa, January 15th, as I said, and Super Tuesday on March 15th. So why does that matter and who will it benefit? I'm going to tell you right now, I think it really benefits Donald Trump and potentially Ron DeSantis. Take two basic things, money and volunteers. Those two things are the gas that keeps the campaign car running. Without those two, you can't go on, right? If you don't have campaign money, if you don't have campaign volunteers, you're not going to do well. And if you're not showing up and winning delegates, they're going to go by the wayside. Nobody's going to give you money, and no one's going to wake up early to put up your signs if you don't look like you can win. And I've said this before, if you don't do well in those early states, both of those people are going to dry up and you're out. There's no question about it. Pence and DeSantis, as we've talked about before, are all in Iowa in a weak showing by either one of them. I just don't see how they go forward. I mean, maybe they limp into New Hampshire or they make it all the way to South Carolina, but it would be super tough to make it all the way to Super Tuesday. I think DeSantis right now has enough money to make it a race, but we'll see. In New Hampshire, though, it's all in for Chris Christie, and there's no way, none, zero, nada, that he goes on to South Carolina with a less than stellar showing in New Hampshire. He really has to put up a good number if he thinks he's going to get there, right? So we go to Nevada, and then the fourth and final state, South Carolina. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to guess that the 1 and 2 percenters in the race, I'm talking your Will Hurd, Asa Hutchinson, they're well gone. They're not going to get past Iowa if they even get there. I believe they are gone well before Iowa even happens. But in South Carolina, you have two favorites, Nikki Haley, the former 2-term governor, and Tim Scott, the 2nd-term senator there. There is a possibility that the two home state favorites, Nikki Haley, the 2-term governor, and Tim Scott, one of them, I think, might drop out before South Carolina. They really don't want to be embarrassed in their own home state. But nonetheless, even if either or both stay in, if they don't do really well in South Carolina, they're gone. Sorry, Charlie. You just can't get blown out in your own home state and then think that you're going to keep going. But there's a real surprise. And here's what my big prediction for everyone is. If DeSantis hangs on, and my prediction is that he's got a decent chance of doing that into Super Tuesday, if he does, in fact, do well in Iowa in particular, my prediction is this. We will have a 2-person race effective Super Tuesday. Barring, as I said, a big win by either Haley or Scott in South Carolina, if everything plays out the way that I think it will, on Super Tuesday, we effectively have a race between DeSantis and Trump. Now, on to the debates. Here's what's going on. The RNC may have a small issue here. See, the criteria, as we've laid out to get into that first debate, had 2 parts. The first is a polling window. All of the polls had to be conducted in the window between July 1st and August 21st, which is 2 days before that first debate in Milwaukee. And second, the polls had to be conducted with a minimum of 700 likely Republican voters. The key word there is likely. And you see a lot of polls, they say registered voters, potential voters, whatever. If it doesn't say likely, it won't count. But most media polls are done on the cheap, meaning they're done with registered voters. It takes much less time and money to get 700 people to answer a polling question than it does 700 likely voters. In politics, it's called the screen, meaning that in order to get a likely voter, you have to find somebody who's usually voted in at least 2 of the last 4 elections. That's a lot harder. You have to call a lot more people. And when you have to call a lot more people, it costs a lot more money. Media organizations don't want to spend the money. Their goal is not to worry about the criteria for the Republican debates. They just want a story to write. So they'll do the cheapest way possible. A brand new poll, though, that came out for Morning Consult was good news for Chris Christie. It had him at 3% nationally, which is more than the 1% needed. It was done with 3,000 respondents. Wow, that's great. Here's the rub. When you go in and read the fine details, it's potential voters that Morning Consult used, meaning I don't think that poll will count. So that's another problem. Remember, you've got to get 3 polls to get you in 1%, and you only have that small window. How many media organizations are going to do 700 likely voters? It may be a problem for the RNC that they can't get enough actual qualified polls to allow people to get 3. That's going to be something to keep an eye on. And then remember the donor requirement, 40,000 unique donors, including 200 in at least 20 states. Chris Christie just announced that he met that threshold. So he says on that part of the debate criteria, he's in. Now we know Trump's met it and DeSantis has met it. Nikki Haley says that she's met it. Vivek Ramaswamy says that he's met it. Tim Scott and Mike Pence say that they think they will be there. Very interesting language on that. But, you know, you've gotten a lot of emails probably in your inbox. Candidates are asking for $1. They just want to get to that 40,000 donor, unique donor number, right? Give me $1, I can say you're a donor, 1 less to get to it. The most ingenious, though, is, I think, North Dakota's Doug Burgum. He began to offer $20 gift cards for a $1 donation. And check this out. He's only offering it to the first 40,000. You wonder why? He only needs 40,000. And just to get on stage, that's what it's going to take for him. By the way, in case you're interested in doing this, you can only get 1, right? They're not dumb enough to give you 2. So look, I think showing that you have grassroots support and getting 1% in August, which is just a few months ahead of when those first votes are being cast in Iowa, it makes sense. If you can't do that, if you can't get 1% in a national poll, you're not going to win. I mean, that's just the reality. But as I said, I think the RNC may have an issue with getting enough qualifying polls that meet that threshold of 700 likely Republican voters. I just think that we're going to hear more about this. My guess is that the RNC at some point is going to have to tweak the criteria. And once you tweak it once, Katie bar the door, baby, because I think that's the problem. Then everyone's going to say, well, if you're going to make this tweak, make that tweak, make that tweak. They have backed themselves into a corner because of that. Speaking of that first debate, though, guess what? We are going to be there in Milwaukee, launching the new show that we've been talking about. So I look forward to seeing you there, to being able to tell you everything that's happening in Milwaukee, to bring you inside the debate hall, talk to some of the candidates and their top aides. Make sure that if you know someone that really is a political junkie, you're signing up for these videos. And you're also going to Locals, SeanSpicer.locals.com, to get insight into the new show, to give me some feedback, to tell me what you want to see. I'll see you in Milwaukee. Well, if you enjoyed this video, click the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell to make sure that you never miss another video.